Gosh, I said to you, didn't I, before, Rach, like how this podcast could go one or two ways, how we're either going to be in this like insufferable silence, this doom and gloom, this kind of like cloud of like negativity, and yet we're sat here in this glorious little booth. I'm in Farringdon, you're in Switzerland, celebrating the fact that England have progressed despite a very shaky start in that first game. We didn't know that it was far from being a given in those early couple of days in the tournament. So how are we feeling, Rach, just first off, before we even get stuck into the performance? I mean, talk me through the elation of being in Switzerland with the Lionesses in a quarterfinals.
Yeah, it's great, a weight off, coming into this tournament knowing England were in the group of death, how difficult it was going to be. If you'd told me that England would score 11 goals in this group, you would assume that they would top it. Mm-hmm. But no. France
That's
equally,
not enough
I think.
Anymore.
No, I think France also scored 11 goals. Yeah, the fact that they've gotten out of the group, especially after the first performance, I think people will be pleased, especially the nature of both wins. And just from like a coverage point of view, it's so much more enjoyable when it's not doom and gloom, negative kind of hyperbole kind of overreaction. So I'm very pleased that at least they're through to the quarterfinals. At least the quarterfinals, right? They've got that far, rather than we can like look at that rather than think beyond the quarterfinals.
I think it's that we're not sitting here today thinking about the post-mortem and what went wrong and like how we pick ourselves up from this and, how devastating it would be to see a champion then knocked out in the groups. Like none of those narratives exist, which thank God, it could have been an alternate universe. But it was such a delight, I think, to see such consistency across the last two games. And we're obviously going to get onto the games in a second, but I've got to admit, like it just felt like there was an energy to last night. I was out at She's a Baller's watch party. We had a lovely time. Like loads of people came down, food and drinks and stuff. And like there was just like this buzz and this energy and this atmosphere. And like it was so nice to just be a part of like, I feel absolutely gutted that I'm not in Switzerland. But I think there's so many different occasions like taking place. There's so many watch parties across London that are taking place, kind of bring people together for these moments. And I think where we've had this dramatic kind of like down and then up and then, oh God, like we have to, this kind of jeopardy in the last game, it's kind of created that like buzz that fans want to turn out to go and see these games and watch it with other people. So I would say, I think the atmosphere is definitely picked up in London. But yeah, I'd give anything to be where you guys are.
Something I noticed as well, you speak about kind of the positive kind of collaborative nature of things, I guess, in what you're doing back in London and the rest of England. But it just made me think of like, all of this talk pre-tournament about how the absence of certain players was going to impact the camp. Was there a little bit of unrest? Was there unhappiness with players not starting? Like there was this kind of narrative being pulled from the news that had come out pre-tournament. And I noticed yesterday, because I was there early and I was sat up in the press box for a little while because the stupid fucking plugs in Switzerland are the most annoying things, and they use these like extension cables in the press room that nobody can fit anything in unless you've got a really specific plug. So I was in the press box with Sophie having a lovely kind of view of the pitch, and I watched as all the players came out to do their little pre-match yell, oh yeah, that's what the pitch looks like and that's what the stands look like and that's what the grass feels like, even though I was here yesterday.
Did you get any like visualizations?
I actually, it was Chloe Kelly broke away at one point and she was just kind of standing in the box looking at the goal, and I leaned over to Sophie and I was like, that's visualization right there. That's her like imagining herself in those moments. But what I loved was that the England group that came out were just all together. There weren't like little groups over there, little groups. When they all first came out, they were all together, standing together, chatting, like pointing stuff out to each other. They took their phones out. They were having some photos taken together. There was a real like nice camaraderie. And I really noticed that last night when the subs scored. There's obviously this new thing where they click their fingers when someone scores. But when the subs scored, both times they went over to the bench exploded for them, even though it was 5 and 6. And, it was a lovely moment, particularly with Beth Mead running to the bench. And Michelle Adjumang looked the happiest person in the whole stadium that Beth had scored and, like, picked her up. And, like, that was really lovely to see because it just shows you how everyone on the bench is feeling, right? It just reminded me of Euro 2022 when everyone was like, right, I know what my role is. I might not get loads of minutes. And to be fair, quite a few players have gotten minutes. Might not be loads, but they have gotten minutes, which is great.
That's what I was going to say. I think there's only a handful of players who haven't had at least a couple of minutes on the pitch, yeah?
But I thought that was really nice, that kind of collective camaraderie. And, it sounds like a bit like basic to say, but they all seem to really like each other and really want to do well together as a collective. And I think that's actually not always the case in every team. Like, so that was a really nice thing to see when you're winning comfortably and still every goal matters and everyone celebrates every goal with that kind of vigour. I think is a really good sign as you're going into the knockout stages.
I think that's really lovely to hear, because obviously like we don't get a lot of the coverage of obviously the players walking out before to kind of get adjusted to the pitch, kind of like do their visualizations, to kind of just be there in the ground before all the hype and the fans arrive. And I think, you know, we flagged, I think, after the initial defeat against France. I mean, one of the things that I did see was an England squad looking a little bit isolated, looking a bit dejected. And I think, I did have a little bit of a concern that maybe there was these kind of, I don't know, fractions, but I think that was just me kind of like almost dramatising because they'd lost.
Over-analysing.
I was just like, okay, well, does this mean this and does this mean this? But actually, it's like, Chloe, like, calm the fuck down. Everyone's fine.
They spoke about that
each other.
Actually in the post-match. They spoke about that loss and how it, you know, I think it was maybe Kira and even Beth who said, you know, we almost kind of needed that, like to just give us a kick, to have the difficult conversations, to really come together and galvanise and be like, okay, this job just got an awful lot harder and we need to really be on the same wavelength if we're going to achieve what we want to achieve. So yeah, I thought, you know, you're right. Maybe there was that little bit of understandable discontent after an not unexplainable, but like an unusual loss in that everyone just played really bad. To now seeing that, and I think that's quite important going into, you know, the next game. All these games have been hard. It's not going to get any feckin' easier.
Well, I think that's the kind of making of the champions, though, isn't it? That you're not going to have a completely perfect tournament. You are going to have blips. Everyone has them. You're going to have moments of error. You're going to have moments of individual error and also just general team errors. And I think that's the kind of, whether you can override those, whether you can switch off the noise around it, whether you can kind of tune into what's in front of you and just take that next step ahead. That's, I suppose, the kind of making of, you know, being successful in a major tournament. But it makes sense, Rach, to probably get stuck into what actually happened last night, because it was, by all accounts, I think it was just a very consistently confident, assured performance that I think we absolutely all needed. I mean, scoring within the first 13 minutes was exactly what we needed to kind of alleviate any fears that this could be like a complete bogey game, that this was going to be like any kind of tournament upset was going to happen from this. Rach, you kind of mentioned how much hype there was from the Wales camp about, you know, the disruption they could potentially cause England and how they were going to upset the apple cart. And what did you make of those first kind of 10, 15 minutes? I think possibly there was a little bit of looseness with England, but I think generally speaking I can't really fault the entire 90 minutes.
Yeah, look, it was a little bit cagey in the beginning, which is understandable, and I'm not going to say because it's a derby. It's because it was a game England had to win and they'd played badly in the first game and it was a must-win game, so it was understandably a little bit cagey. And, you know, I thought Wales did well in the opening 10-15 to kind of manage England a little bit, you know. We started to wonder whether England would struggle to pick them apart and find those spaces and those gaps. And actually, that wasn't really a problem at all for England, I didn't think. Maybe in the opening 10, it was. You know, there was definitely some tackles going in during the game. There was a couple of on Georgia Stanway very early on. I think she had a tough night of it on the pitch. I just kept seeing her being upended on the ground.
It was definitely physical.
Yeah, hopefully she doesn't have too many bruises today. And my God, that shiner on poor Lauren James's face looks terribly sore.
Really come out. Yeah.
Another player who just looked like she was really enjoying her football, which is just really nice to see when you see players playing with a smile on their face. Even if they miss a goal, LJ's just like, it's cool, I'm going to get another one. Like, I'm going to get another goal.
Cool.
I'm going to like set up
like
another goal. So, yeah. And actually you kind of want that. Like, you want players not to overanalyze any misses or whatever. That, you know, when you have the confidence to know it's cool, you're going to get another shot. Yeah, I just thought that England were causing Wales a lot of problems, and Wales were defending well initially. Like, I think Russo probably could have had a hat-trick. But yeah, I was very impressed. Once that first opening goal came, reminded me a bit of Norway. It was like it took the weight off, and they're like,
definitely.
Okay, we're away now. We can crack on.
Well, let's definitely talk about that first goal, because it did come with a bit of controversy. So obviously Georgia Stanway goes down on the edge of the box. It looks like her ankle is just slightly clipped, but the replays, I mean, I've gone over this a couple of different times from a couple of different angles. To me, I'm not entirely convinced it was a penalty. I mean, Rach, what was your take on it? What would you do if you were the ref? Because, yeah, I'm not convinced it was, really.
I think the issue was she'd given the free, outside the box, and VAR intervened, as it so often does. And the clear and obvious error was that it was inside the box, not outside the box. So because she'd given the free, the error was the location of where that free should be taken. Do you know what I mean? So VAR almost overruled, rather saying, interrogating, was it maybe, like, it was one of those kind of ones that like one person could say, oh yeah, if that was anywhere else in the pitch, I probably would have given a free. And others would say that was too soft to give a penalty. And I kind of feel like VAR just intervened and said, you got the location wrong, and that's the clear and obvious error. So actually that free that you've given should be inside, not outside. And I think that's potentially where the VAR decision came in, as opposed to was it or wasn't it. I always get confused about VAR and what it can and can't do. And I sometimes get confused about what's clear and obvious. And I find that really frustrating. And I think when we're looking at fucking toenails and shoelaces and whether someo's offside or not, you're like, is this really what it's come in for? But
we've seen so many body parts on that VAR reconstruction where they've got the white line go across. Like you said, like we've got a nose in it, an elbow, everything in between.
Can you score with your boob? With maybe, yep, that nipple is definitely offside.
Does that give you an advantage?
Look, I can understand the frustration behind it, but equally, like, I saw people saying she dived, and I saw people saying it was outside, and I saw people saying, like, all the kind of reasons people were giving. There was no kind of consensus as to why it shouldn't be a penalty. So, I can understand the frustration. And funnily enough, that's exactly what happened against Norway as well. Ellen White penalty, and some said that was too soft to give. Didn't really matter in the end. They scored 5 more goals.
I think my personal take is that I think it was a little bit soft. I don't think Georgia Stanway dived, but I don't think it. For me, it wasn't a pen. I do think it probably was.
Tell you what, if that had been the other end, the Welsh fans would be looking for that, and so would the Welsh team.
100% all day. And when you look at the wider context, it didn't really matter. It wasn't a 2-1 game. It wasn't a 1-0 game. Like, let's not get carried away that this was.
It's not the reason Wales lost. Yeah,
100%. It had absolutely no bearing on the game, essentially just being the opener. Also, we've got to give a massive shout out to Ella Toone. She's been absolutely incredible, I think, in every single game, I think, this tournament. I mean, she's the one that everyone's talking about. LJ's the one that everyone's talking about. I think them two in particular have had absolute stormers so far. So she became the first player on record, so that's since 2013, to score a goal, provide an assist, and complete 100% of passes in a single Euros match. She's kind of like dropped into that, obviously the role to the number 10 position, leaving sort of LJ to kind of drift further upfield and do her own thing, and kind of have that creativity and that kind of, I think, freedom. I think to express herself. But yeah, how much have you kind of enjoyed watching Ella Toone kind of, I don't know, just, I wouldn't even say grow into the competition, just take the competition by storm just from the outset.
Yeah, and it's something she spoke about post-match, and she's kind of said, like, I've missed this Ella Toone, I've missed playing like this, and how much she's enjoying her football. And I think that tactical switch of moving LJ to the right and retaining LJ's place in the team and her creativity and what she offers, and shoring up a little bit more in that midfield, has been really important. And I think Ella Toone offers that robustness, and we can see what she can do going forward. She scores goals, but what she does defensively as well, and the cover she provides to the other midfielders, is really, really important. And I think we were seeing in the previous games Kira Walsh being kind of shifting to the right sometimes, almost feeling like she was in her right wing era. I keep seeing Kira Walsh an awful lot more up the pitch than I'm used to.
Let's definitely rephrase that. We can't call it a right wing era.
Oh, sorry, her right winger era, right forward era. No, but you know what I mean. Like, and I noticed that, I think, in the game last night, Ella Toone maybe took up that role a little bit more. And I just think both Kira Walsh and Georgia Stanway spoke about Ella Toone in the mix zone yesterday, and the importance she's played in supporting them in the midfield role, and the cover she gives and the physicality she gives. And they spoke about not just what she does going forward. And I think sometimes it's very easy to just look at what players do on the ball and judge them only and solely on that. And I think we've talked about that with Alessia Russo. What players do off the ball is almost as important. The space they create, the runs they stop, the tackles they make, the spaces they take up to prevent an opposition being able to use that space is equally important, and it kind of dictates how the opposition maybe plays. So Ella Toone has played a very important role in that in the last 2 games. And I appreciate, the Netherlands and Wales have been different games to France, but the area that France dominated, apart from that right side of the pitch, up the front of the pitch where the forward right players play, and they also dominated the midfield. And I think having a creative player like LJ still allowed to roam, but up on the right side of the pitch. God, now I'm super conscious of saying right wing. Up on the right side of the pitch, you still benefit from her creativity, her freedom. She's allowed to express herself, but that central midfield area is still very much kind of in control and, you know, solid, if you know what I mean, as opposed to going, oh God, there's a gap. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, wonderful to see. A brilliant game. For me, she was player of the match for me. But that was given to Kira Walsh. But I'm not going to get into controversial player of the match conversations. I thought many players, just like the last game, many players could have been player of the match and had very, very good games. So that's always a good sign.
Well, let's definitely talk about Ella's bestie, Russo, as well, because I think she's another one who's kind of taken the competition by storm. I think she was kind of frustrated in the France game, but then the second game, you know, getting those 3 assists, getting that player of the match, and then coming into this game, again, incredible performance. And like you said, her work rate off the ball. I mean, it's sometimes hard to see. I think when you're watching the game at home, and obviously the entire camera focus is going to be on like what's, you know, where the ball is and what's being played in front of you, but you don't see those kind of runs in behind. You don't see that kind of tracking back. You don't see like the little work, sort of that there's massive bits of those significant things that players are doing off the ball to kind of create those chances and make sure they're in the right place at the right time. But Russo, I think, has been, it was such a lovely moment, I think, for her last night to kind of get her goal, because it kind of felt like she really wanted, like it was like the bars around it, the atmosphere. And I think you could tell how much it meant to her and how much she wanted it, because I think she's been so hungry for it the entire competition.
Yeah, look, I think one of the reasons the goals have been quite spread out, you know, and last night I believe there were 6 different goal scorers, right? And 3 in the last game. One of the reasons they've been spread out is because teams focus on Russo and she draws away a lot of defenders in key moments. And I do think Wales did well early on to kind of marshal her, be on top of her. And anytime the ball did come into her, she basically had a Welsh player like glued to her. So I think, for me, I think she actually could have done a bit better last night. I think she could have scored more. And I think that will only serve to kind of fire her up a little bit. I'm glad she got a goal because she deserved one. But it's understandable that, you know, she'd be frustrated because literally Wales were kind of all over her. But that's also the role of a number 9 sometimes, is to draw the attention, to draw the defenders and to take the focus and leave the gaps for someone else to come in and bury it.
I think with Russo, though, I always get a little bit worried where she doesn't score. Like, she creates so many assists, she creates so many chances for other people. It's like always the bridesmaid and never the bride. But I think in that moment, it kind of felt like, I mean, she scored in the 44th minute. It felt like then, not necessarily the floodgates were going to open, but it kind of felt like that weight off her shoulders in a way.
The relief.
That she was going to not be stuck with this tournament where she kind of did everything but score. So yeah, super happy for her. And there was so much weight and so much expectation going into this tournament for her. I mean, she's been all over every Addy billboard. It's her face to face with Aitana Bonmati and these kind of big campaigns of them two going head to head. And it just felt like, actually, you know, given how, you know, well Bonmati's done, given how well Spain had done, it kind of felt like, you know, she needed that moment as well. So yeah, really congratulations to her, because I think that was obviously a huge moment for her. We've got to talk about, and I know we touched on it at the start of the pod, the subs that came on. Sarina made really big use of the subs and has done pretty much throughout the entire tournament, which a lot of people are kind of saying, no, it's a complete, reshift, a revamp of the Sarina that we all know from the Euros. But we've seen, since then, I mean, that was 3 years ago, we've seen Sarina progress and do and mix teams up and kind of not stick with the same starting 11 for long periods of time. Like, she's had to have that variation, and we're a completely different space than we were 3 years ago. But it's been so lovely to kind of see the use that she's made of the subs coming on, and also given those chances there having that trust in a lot of the younger players, your Aggie Beaver-Jones, your Jess Parks, your Michelle Adjiman coming on. So yeah, I mean, how lovely has it been to kind of see the crowd reaction to, you know, some of these players getting their first Euros minutes, because it's such a special time. Yeah,
it's great. And, you know, I think when you're going into like future games and you've made it to the knockout stages, and we're going to come to Sweden, but it was something I thought a little bit about, some of the decisions Sweden made in terms of the players used, is that players need minutes as well. They need a little bit of confidence if they're going into knockout stages, and to be able to, in the group of death, be able to get so many players in and even have minutes, even if it's Michelle Adjiman, and we all thought maybe she should have come on a bit earlier, even if it's that, the fact that she's got those minutes and the first start done and out of the way, it's not something she has to worry about again. So the next time she comes on, it might not feel like a big deal. Not that I actually think that phases Michelle Adjiman. I feel like she's so laser focused and knows exactly what her job is.
Her.
Yeah. I like the fact that she brought on substitutes at halftime. Thought that was really good. I thought both substitutes played well. And yeah, and Ike Beaver-Jones getting a good chunk of time, getting a goal. So yeah, I think it's really important to have players come on and not just come on, but actually do a job and feel like they've impacted the game as well. I think is quite important when you're going into the knockout stage.
I was going to say, and it did feel like the impact was almost immediate. I mean, Beth Mead obviously getting the goal, Aggie Beaver-Jones getting her goal as well. Obviously a big moment for her. I think Aggie Beaver-Jones obviously getting that moment, but she was saying actually in that she's been keeping a memory book of all of her photographs from the camp, which is super cute, because I suppose nothing's ever guaranteed, is it? And I suppose when you're such a young player to have such an incredible memory, being around the players for the first time, getting your first minutes, getting your first goal in that environment is absolutely huge. So yeah, I think it was just having Sarina, I suppose, have that trust and belief in the players that she has, and especially those youngsters as well, to kind of, I don't know, they're going to be called across. If you've got 2 weeks left of the tournament, you don't know how far you're going to progress at the moment, so you kind of need to ensure that those players are kind of, I don't know, getting those initial nerves out of the way, getting that first game out of the way.
I don't believe Michelle Adjiman would have been in the game plan for the France game.
Do you reckon?
No, I don't think she probably would have been. I don't think they expected the France game to go the way it did. So for Sarina Wiegman to be able to turn around and go, I trust you can go in there and do a job as the youngest player in the team in your first senior major tournament. I believe that you can go. I trust in you. And I think that's really important. So those kind of things are important for the players as well, just to know that you've got your manager's backing. I think that's, pretty cool.
Definitely. It'll be interesting to see how they start up against Sweden in the next round. But we're not going to talk about that just yet. Right, let's talk a little bit about Wales then. Hannah's Kane was a nice consolation. The goal was a nice consolation for Wales in the end. But they struggled in this group, obviously not picking up any points, but have been obviously moments of positivity. Jess Fishlock getting that first goal, putting a fair decent game to France in the second game for them as well. But yeah, and they were in the group of death. It was always going to be a big ask for them to make it out of the group stages. Yeah,
I think they've ticked off some of the things they would have wanted to tick off. When I look at say a Poland, who I think were ranked lowest, they got goals and points, which I think was huge and probably unexpected for them, and I think would have been a very tough ask for Wales to do that in this group. So I think to score against France and to score against England are real positives for them. And for the Welsh fans to have that moment last night as well was lovely, because they've travelled over and made themselves known and made themselves loud, and I know that's been a huge driver of the Welsh team. So on the pitch, maybe not the best experience, but there have been moments, and I think they'll very fondly look back at their first ever major tournament. You only have your first tournament once, and it's not always going to be perfect, especially when it's your first tournament. It's going to be a grind, so I think they'll very much focus on the positives, and hopefully this will be a nice spark for Welsh football as well, and we see more and more girls getting into it. That's the ultimate goal, so that we see Wales at major tournaments more often.
Definitely. We've seen some very lovely narratives around it, and we've had even at the sort of watch parties that I've been to in and around London, we've had quite a large subsection of kind of Wales fans as well. Loads of people flying the Wales flag, getting involved in going to see the games, and that's been really lovely to kind of see that excitement in the fan base too. The future's a little bit uncertain with Jess Fishlock. She said she's not made a decision on whether to retire from international football. Bit of an unusual one, kind of in terms of not making a call. You kind of expect that maybe, a player like her would probably say after the Euros, that's going to be my kind of swan song, my final, what a moment to end on as well, sort of scoring Wales's first goal in a Euros. But what do we think is going to be the sort of deciding factor? Why do we think that they're so, she's not made that call yet?
Well, I think she probably doesn't want the narrative of Wales's first tournament to be about her retiring. Mm-hmm. I think she'd quite like the team to bask in the pride that the country feel for them coming to their first ever major tournament. And I think she'll probably want to allow them to experience that first when they go home and not make it about her. I also imagine she'd like control over that situation and decision. And I imagine she might quite like to do it with a final game in Wales. I know for, say, fans of teams, there's nothing worse than finding out a player's leaving after they play their last game and you don't get that opportunity to say goodbye or for them to have a farewell. So I imagine she just wants a little bit more control over that situation and that decision, and she doesn't want to make it from an emotional standpoint. This is probably one of the highlights of her career, I imagine, getting to a major tournament with Wales, but I'd say she'd like to get home, let the emotions die down, and then be a bit more clear-headed when she makes that decision.
Coming up after this, a dramatic battle between the Netherlands and France. Well, Rach, the second game in Group D happening at the same time as the England game. France blew the Dutch away in the second half to finish top of Group D with 9 points. Always going to be a bit of a difficult one for the Netherlands, who, with England beating Wales, needed a 4-goal margin of victory in order to progress. They went into the second half 2-1 up, but were vulnerable as they chased those 2 extra goals. This was... So they kept switching the Lionesses game and then kind of thrown over to what was happening in the Netherlands-France game, and it was very balanced, then it was unbalanced, then it was balanced, and people were trying to at the same time figure out what would happen, okay, if we ended the game like this. And the comms team as well and ITV were trying to do the best job of kind of figuring out, okay, well, how many goals does that group now need, that country now need. It was absolute chaos for a fair few minutes. So they kept switching in on the 22nd minute, the 26th minute, the 41st minute. And then there was like a flurry of goals in the 61st, 64th, 67th. So the screen was like this. It was just like all over the shop. But yeah, it obviously worked in the most favourable way, I think, for England, that France dominated the game. I thought they were incredibly smart. I think we saw exactly what we saw with France in the England game. We saw that passion, we saw their aggression going forwards, we saw how quick and speedy they can be and taking the game to the Netherlands. But at the same time, I mean, it was always going to be an uphill battle for the Netherlands to come into this game and walk away with the points. But couldn't have gone any better for us, to be honest, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to be difficult to have to score that many. It was always going to be even more difficult if you leave Miedema on the bench, which I just couldn't understand.
What do you think the rationale was behind that?
Genuinely, I don't know. Look, maybe there's more that we don't know. But from the press conference, Jonker said, "Oh well, when we needed 5 goals, I didn't see the point in bringing her on," which in itself is a take.
Nonsensical.
I mean, that's like Wales saying we didn't even bother turning up because we need 4 goals against England. You still go out and you try your best, which I just thought was a bit weird. Also then starter, because you didn't need that many goals at the beginning of the game. Just when you're 2-1 up, I appreciate that she didn't have an impact in the England game, and that is a lot down to the fact that England completely nullified the threat and they couldn't find her. The Dutch could not feed the ball to her. And that's not just down to the fact that saying to put it all on Miedema, essentially. There was a lot of reasons why she was marked out of the game. She showed in the Wales game that she can create something out of nothing. She's one of the most creative players in the team. So I just found it really odd that she didn't start and then not to have her come on. They're 2-1 up. You need goals. You say France dominated, but it wasn't they didn't have the Dutch had more possession, for example. They both created shots. They both created shots on target. France definitely improved on that side of things, with slightly more touches in the box. And I just think that shows perhaps that lack of creativity that the Dutch needed, that was missing somewhat. So I found some of the tactical decisions and the substitutes unusual across the tournament. It was the same with England. I think sometimes it's a bit of a case of just get the best 11 players on the pitch, regardless of if they're playing in their best positions, if that makes sense. And, I just sometimes that doesn't really work. And look, maybe Jonker is frustrated and wants to say, F you, Dutch Federation, given he basically was told you're sacked, but you have to carry on into this tournament. I think more will come out of it. But the fact that they went 2-1 up against France, that should have been a moment where you at least bring on a creative player to try and turn something into nothing, rather than leaving yourself exposed by really just, having a player who you can kind of target and say maybe she can do something with, rather than say having to push the whole team forward to try and get this goal against a France that are deadly and fast. So yeah, a disappointing tournament overall. I think people got excited about how they played against the Welsh, and I think perhaps there was an element of Wales making them look good, especially in the second half. I just don't think Jonker has done great things for his CV.
Well, talking of Yonkers, he was obviously asked about the situation after the game and sort of how the Netherlands hadn't really kind of found their feet in the tournament. And he said, "I do not want to say anything about the Dutch Football Federation today. I've done everything to get the best possible result, but I do not control a number of aspects. I do not have influence on these matters, and I am not implicitly inferring about the Dutch Football Federation," which kind of feels like...
talking in riddles. What are you on about?
Yeah, like... I think when you say, "Oh, but it's not about that," it's you obviously are upset about the situation, understandably so, but at the same time, let's not lie about it. Yeah, it is what it is.
No, it just feels a bit like the bad things happened, but it wasn't my fault. Mm-hmm. But the good stuff is because of me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
managers who don't take responsibility for their own account, like, as in, don't take accountability for how their team has done. I don't get it. Like,
tactically, they got it so wrong against England, and you had Van de Donk coming out saying I was fit when that game was crying out for a Van de Donk, and then having to come out and say something different because obviously she was told that's not the line we're going with. Like, just little things like that where you're a bit like, okay. Like, initially I thought maybe Viv would come on at half time, having seen the first half and seen areas to exploit and know what to do and where to go, but no, stayed on the bench. I'm intrigued. Maybe more will come of it. This is the thing. I wasn't at that match. I've just been hearing from other journalists what was said in the post-match, and maybe we'll find out she had a niggle or whatever that might be. But I do think if you're going to leave a Miedema out, that's something that should be clearly addressed as to why, because that's a hammering from the French, and they were hammered by England.
Yonkers feels like the kind of manager who will do like an expose interview, or there'll be some kind of like Yonkers
or a podcast
type thing. Yeah, 100%.
Call it the Puppet Master or whatever it was, the Puppet Show, whatever.
I mean, when you kind of look at the Netherlands and sort of what they've been doing in sort of recent years, I suppose. I mean, after winning the Euros in 2017, the Netherlands made it to the World Cup final in 2019. Since then, they've lost 2 quarterfinals at the 2023 World Cup and at the 2022 Euros, and gone out now in the group stages. I mean, recent tournament history isn't good for the Netherlands. It feels like where do they go from here, essentially? I mean, you've got the players, you've got the quality, you've got the talent there.
I think it's
like a Norway almost.
Those last couple of tournaments, though, you know, they had injuries to key players. Palova was out for a long time. Miedema missed the World Cup, missed the majority of Euro 2022, came back and was made to play 120 minutes when she was clearly not well enough. So like there is that kind of factor around it, and I just think, yeah, maybe there is a touch of the Norway about it, where you look at that team and think you should be producing more. Like, getting hammered by the Germans before this tournament would not have done them great things for their confidence. But yeah, it is a bit of a conundrum sometimes, but I do think it's an element of perhaps, and we saw that again with Norway, it was like players just not in the right positions, or, you know, stuff like that where you're like, what are we doing? Like, what's happening? I don't get that, you know. Now, I'm not, as you know, I'm not a tactician, but there are definitely things that draw the eye and make you think, I would love to know the insider, be a fly on the wall for the decisions made in some of these things.
I think you're right with what you said before, Rach, about it being a sort of set fire to things as you kind of walk away. Yeah,
I hope it's not that. He needs to get another job. Like, I mean, why would you do that?
Let's give a brief nod to France, because obviously they've been so dominant in Group D. Super impressive, super scary. This kind of feels like the tournament, they've kind of really, all the clogs or all the wheels in the machine have started to really come together. They look ferocious, they look pacey, like they've got, you know, these superstar players. You've got Cascarino, I think Baltimore's had a great game, Katoto's had a great game. Yeah, I mean, Rach, do we feel like, I mean, are we scared by the France attacking line? Because they've done absolutely bits this tournament.
I'm always scared of France. I think consistently over a 90-minute period, I think sometimes they struggle to put together a full 90-minute performance. I think you saw that against England in the second half, arguably. And lots of people want to say, well, they took off their best players and then like brought on like an absolute stacked subs, which I just thought, like, well, we just won't mention that, will we? Because that wouldn't fit the narrative. You know, they conceded against Wales. Wales had a good first half against them. They didn't have, you know, Dutch were ahead in the first half. They conceded again. They've conceded in every game. So I think from that respect, that's something they're going to want to work on ahead of the knockout stages. They're playing Germany, which is going to be a really interesting game. A replay of the Euro 2022 semi-final. I feel like there's goals in that game. Germany have kind of just forgotten how to defend and have lost 2 defenders for that game as well, which isn't ideal. But Yeah, I think they always look frightening going forward. And Delphine Cascarino, like, if you watch one thing today, make it that goal, because her goal was an absolute sublime piece of football, a wonderful goal. The Dutch just kind of, fucking melted away. I don't know what happened. They all just kind of stepped off and were like, have at it. And she absolutely did. It was a beautiful goal. But yeah, I think France, frightening going forward, but can be got at.
Definitely, 100%. There's definitely weaknesses there, but I've got to say, like, they've been one of the teams that have really, really impressed me in this tournament. They've just looked so, I don't know, fearless.
Relentless.
And just like relentless. Yeah. Let's have a brief mention then of the Sweden thumping Germany. France faced Germany at the weekend in Basel because they could only finish second in Group C after Sweden beat them 4-1. This was Germany's heaviest ever defeat at Euros. Kanaryd has been talking up Sweden's chances, saying she thinks they can go the whole way this time because there's something different about this squad. I think those views can be tempered a little bit. I wouldn't say that what I've seen from Sweden has been, better than what I've seen Spain perform, better than what I've seen France perform, better than the Lionesses' last two games. I think Sweden have definitely had positive performance. I mean, this thumping of Germany, 100% one of those. But I do also think that it came at a point where the German performance just wasn't good enough. I don't think it was a particularly incredible Swedish performance. I think there were definitely moments of that in the game, but Germany fell apart.
I think this game showed how well they did to capitalise on Germany's weaknesses. I don't think their performance against Denmark was that exciting. I found that game really quite boring. Poland just really didn't mount much of a challenge, but this game showed that they could see weaknesses and target them. Granted, Germany were down to 10 because Vamster had been playing quite well. She, of course, was the stand-in for Julia Gwynn, who got injured in the first game, the captain. She was having a really good game, set up the first goal, and then found herself on the goal line and obviously immediately thought that means I'm a goalkeeper and saw straight red. In the opening kind of 10 minutes, I thought, bloody hell, Germany are going to carve Sweden apart because they were getting in behind. And we'd seen it from Germany across the three games where they're creating but not being clinical enough. And that kind of happened. And for the Blackstenius goal, I don't know what was going on in the Germans' minds, but they all just moved to like the left side of the pitch. And Blackstenius was left isolated on the right and just centred the ball. I don't know, maybe they thought she was going to need a couple of shots before she actually scored one, as she so often does. But no, she absolutely buried it. Then the penalty. I think once that player went off as well, Germany just fell apart even more. Holmberg had gotten that goal beforehand. Sweden were 2-1 up, and she'd gotten a lovely goal. And again, goalkeeping, not brilliant, Chloe. I'd love your insight on some of this, but AKB sometimes likes to make the easy things look difficult. And I was getting so frustrated with her in the second half where they'd be playing around from the back, there'd be no pressure, but she'd wait for the pressure before she'd pass the ball. And I appreciate you're trying to pull a player out of position, but your fullback is wide open in space and you're waiting and waiting and waiting until the attacker's practically on top of you. Just to, I don't know, what drama? I don't know what it is. Sometimes I'm just a bit like, what are you doing? Just clear it. So yeah, she didn't have the best game, but I do think Vamster maybe gave her a run for her money.
I definitely think there were moments that they became unnecessarily risky because it only takes like a missed Cruyff turn or, attacker coming at you from a completely different angle, you not appreciating another movement on the pitch, and all of a sudden you've absolutely fucked it. I think, and the commentary were definitely saying the same thing. They were saying, we understand that AKB, she has that confidence with her. She does have that sort of cool, composed nature when she is coming under pressure. But at the same time, you don't need to make things harder for yourself. The pressure and the being in the tournament is already demanding enough. You can just play the simple balls. It's not. Yeah, I agree with that. So yeah, never one for criticising the goalkeeper, but fucking hell, there's ways there's ways to reduce it a bit.
Germany have looked there are times when you think, God, they're looking really good. And then you're like, oh, God, maybe you're not. And it just seems to be lacking that little bit of consistency. And maybe it's this transitional period with a new manager or whatever it might be, because they've got the quality and you've got the likes of Yul Brand looking unbelievable. And, I think this France-Germany game is going to be so interesting.
Oh, God. Who are you putting your money on?
France.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think
They're so
especially with the
dominant.
hurt of the Euro 2022 semi-final, I think that was 2-1 to Germany. Like, they'll see this as an opportunity. They'll look at that Sweden game and go, we can get at this German team. Granted, now they're not going to be down to 10. And it's only a one, and I've had this discussion with some people online, but it's only a 1-game ban for a straight red that isn't like a dangerous challenge. And it doesn't sit right with me that 2 yellows and a straight red can result in the same length of punishment. I just feel like if you get a straight red, regardless of whether it's an intentional handball and not a tackle, if it's a straight red, for me, at least should be 2 games then. So that if you get 2 yellows in a game, that's not as bad as getting a straight red. Why are the 2 punishments the same? But anyway, it just means Famser is out for the France game. So yeah, Germany's going to have to find a third fullback.
Gosh, that's not an easy thing to do in the midst of a tournament. Good luck to them.